What's up, guys? I've given you this project with the card game War. We make a deck of cards, we peel one off for each player, and compare to see who wins. We do that until the deck is out, and then check the final score. This has 3 parts missing that we want to fill in, and let's go through some possible ways to do that. First, let's zoom in on the cards, the creation of the deck, and how we might compare them. Each card is a tuple because it has 2 pieces of info, the rank and the suit. This is just like we did with X and Y points in our slope exercise. So just to imagine what they look like, you'll get 8 and diamond, or Q and club, that kind of thing. I wish we could just say card greater than other, and Python will try. It'll try to compare them, but it's not what we mean. It won't make any sense. So instead, we need to crack it open, use our unpacking to get the rank and the suit for each one separately, just like we did with the X and Y points. But that's still not enough, because if I try to compare the character 8 to the character Q, well, that's not going to follow the rules of war. It's just going to follow whatever encoding they happen to be as a string. So instead, we need to take one more step and say, okay, if it's a number, we do that. If it's not, we give it some other comparable value. Now, if you're somebody who follows along and copies, don't copy this because I'm going to show a better way in a minute, but this is something you might think of. Let's try to turn it into an integer because that's going to work for most of them. But if it's a face card, we have this little dictionary that we look up in the moment. You'll notice that I made 10 as a part of this, even though it could be a number, because I wanted to keep it consistent where they're all a single character. If I had one of them that was bigger, it would look weird, and if I had to look at the first character sometimes, it wouldn't fit with the pattern, so I gave that a T. Now this would totally work, and we could move on, but it's a little unnecessary, because if you'll notice, a dictionary is meant to look up things that are not predictable, that you would have to check, but this is predictable. It's just 10, 11, 12, it's just in order, which is the same as what we have with an index in a list or string, and guess what? We've already got these guys in order. At the top I made the ranks so that I could use them for the creation, but we can also use them to look up the order. Let me show you. We could say, hey, ranks.find. How far along is that 8? And how far along is that Q? And if we compare those, it's a universal currency that will allow us to check who's the highest rank of any 2 cards, whether they're a number or not. So we could say, hey, I put a little arrow just to be cute. That's the 8, and that's the Q. And if we compare those, it doesn't really matter what the number is. It just matters that the Q is farther along, so it wins. And this is much nicer because we're using a built-in method. We don't have to make our own function. And you know what? This is a little bit faster too on the optimization side of things, if that matters, which it doesn't. So next, let's take a look at the main. We want to keep score. And this is going to be pretty easy at first. We just say, if player 1 wins, we do something. If player 2 wins, we do something. At first I thought maybe we'll keep the cards. In real life, if you're playing war and you win a showdown, you take those cards and you have a pile. So instead of writing down any numbers, you just count the cards at the end. And so you could do that. Player 1 gets card 1 and card 2. This is what I would do if I was ever going to display them later or recycle them later when you run out, or if we were doing some complicated tiebreaker where you like 3 face down and 1 face up. But today I'm going to keep it simple and just use a number. So if you get 1, player 1 plus 1, okay? And then for the tiebreaker, I want to just not have a tiebreaker. I want to say like, hey, instead of this extra stuff, let's just build it into the function of who beats who and just make sure that always has a result, no equal. Okay, so how could we do that? Well, in war, like I said, you usually put down 3 or just put down 1 and use a tiebreaker. I'm not going to do that because then we have to worry about at the end of the game running out. Do we recycle cards? It might be a little difficult. So at first, let's use something else, which is the suit can be the tiebreaker. The suits I have are in order in like some games. Spade is the best and heart is the second best and so on. So let's just use that. We can always change it later, but for now, let's say if the ranks are even, we go with the suit. Same pattern, same method. Now, in the main function, we have one more thing to do, which is, let's zoom in on the final. Okay, at the end, we want to say who wins. And that is exactly the same as what this was a minute ago when we were doing our showdown. I showed this version, which has the tie, even though we ended up taking that out, because there is going to be a possible tie at the end of the game. So imagine you took this and just changed one thing. Well, there you go. We're going to add this to the end of our main function, and I'm not going to show it all at once because it would be like 6-point font and nobody could read it anyway. But this is what would happen at the end, and this is one way to solve that problem. There you go.